Welcome back to Pocket Change Fortune. What if I told you that four ordinary-looking US coins could be hiding a combined value of over 157,000? One tiny Roosevelt dime, a 1953 Lincoln wheat penny, a 20 Chowder 11 Lincoln Shield cent, and a 1978 Lincoln Memorial penny could be hiding extraordinary secrets in plain sight. Most people would spend these coins without a second thought. But collectors know that one unusual detail can change everything. So before you spend your next penny or dime, look closely, because your pocket change might be hiding a fortune. First up, the 2004 P. Roosevelt dime may look like an ordinary 10-cent coin at first glance, but the example we are examining has several characteristics that make it far more interesting than a typical circulated dime. It carries the date 2004 and the P mint mark, identifying it as a Philadelphia minted issue. The coin is described as almost circulated, with visible scratches, areas of delamination damage, dark or black shading, and an overall fine condition appearance. Those imperfections might make many people ignore it immediately, but that is exactly where collectors need to slow down and look more carefully. The Roosevelt dime was introduced in 1946, shortly after the death of President Franklin Delano Roosevelt. The United States Mint chose Roosevelt for the dime partly because of his connection with the March of Dimes and the fight against polio. Since then, the Roosevelt dime has remained one of the longest-running designs in American coinage. The obverse features Roosevelt's portrait facing left, while the reverse displays a torch between an olive branch and an oak branch, symbolizing liberty, peace, and strength. The 2004 P issue was produced during the modern era of Roosevelt dime production, so an ordinary example would generally not be considered a major rarity simply because of its date. That distinction is extremely important. A coin dated 2004 with a P mint mark is not automatically worth tens of thousands of dollars. When a very high valuation is attached to an ordinary-looking modern coin, collectors should investigate the reason carefully. The value would have to come from a significant error, variety, unusual minting characteristic, exceptional provenance, or another independently verifiable feature. In terms of composition, a standard 2004 Roosevelt dime is made from a copper-nickel outer layer bonded to a copper core. The overall composition is approximately 91.67% copper and 8.33% nickel. The coin weighs approximately 2.268 grams, has a diameter of about 17.91 millimeters, and is approximately 1.35 millimeters thick. Its edge is reeded, with numerous small grooves around the circumference. There is technically no conventional length measurement for a round coin. Instead, collectors normally record diameter and thickness. These measurements are useful because they can help identify altered pieces, damaged coins, or unusual planchets. If you encounter a 2004 P dime that appears unusually thick, thin, oversized, undersized, or lightweight, do not immediately assume it is valuable. Measure it carefully and compare the results with official specifications. The most interesting feature of this particular example is the combination of surface damage and dark coloration. Delamination can occur when metal separates from the surface or when a problem involving the bonded layers creates an abnormal appearance. However, not every peeling, flaking, or rough surface is a mint error. Environmental corrosion, chemical exposure, mechanical damage, and harsh cleaning can create similar-looking effects. The black shade is another feature that deserves attention. Dark toning can develop naturally as the metal reacts with its environment, while black discoloration can also result from corrosion, contamination, storage conditions, or exposure to chemicals. A collector should therefore examine whether the coloration is stable and natural-looking, or whether it appears artificially applied. Scratches are especially important because they generally reduce eye appeal. A scratched coin should never be polished or aggressively cleaned in an attempt to improve its appearance. Cleaning can permanently damage the surface and may make an otherwise interesting coin less desirable to serious collectors. So where does rarity enter the picture? The rarity of a modern dime should be established through a specific diagnostic feature rather than simply its date and mint mark. Collectors should inspect the lettering, date, mint mark, rim, edge, torch, bands, and overall strike. They should also compare the coin with known varieties and documented mint errors. If something genuinely unusual appears, professional authentication becomes extremely important. The claimed market value for this example is $80,000. That is an extraordinary figure for a 2004 P. Roosevelt dime and should be treated as a claimed or potential value rather than a guaranteed market price. A professional grading service, auction records, or an established specialist would be needed to substantiate such a valuation. Condition alone, especially with scratches and delamination damage, would not normally justify such a price. For collectors, the best approach is simple. Preserve the coin exactly as found. Do not clean it, scrape the dark areas, remove the damaged material, or apply chemicals. Place it in a protective holder that does not contain damaging materials, and document both sides of the coin with clear photographs. Also pay attention to the edge. Many interesting errors become easier to understand when the edge is examined. Compare its weight, diameter, thickness, and overall appearance with a normal 2004 P dime. If the measurements differ substantially, professional evaluation becomes even more important. The real treasure in a coin like this may not be obvious from the date alone. It could be hidden in a minting characteristic that most people would never notice while spending loose change. That is why collectors inspect ordinary-looking coins before dismissing them. A coin that has passed through thousands of hands can carry a story that is impossible to see at first glance. The scratches, dark shade, and surface damage on this 2004 P. Roosevelt dime may simply represent circulation and environmental exposure. Or, if accompanied by a genuine mint-made abnormality, they could make the piece worth much closer examination. For anyone discovering a coin like this in an old jar, drawer pocket, or inherited collection, the lesson is clear. Never assume that a modern dime has no story. Check the date, check the mint mark, examine the surfaces, weigh the coin, inspect the edge, and compare every unusual characteristic with documented examples. If the claimed $80,000 valuation is ever supported by authentication and strong market evidence, this ordinary-looking 10-cent piece would become a remarkable example of how a small coin can hide an extraordinary story. Until then, the smartest collector treats it as a potentially interesting discovery that deserves careful examination, not a guaranteed fortune. That is what makes this kind of coin fascinating. Its face value may be only 10 cents, but the questions surrounding its condition, surfaces, possible errors, and authenticity can transform a simple piece of pocket change into a serious numismatic investigation. Next up, the 1953 Lincoln wheat penny is one of those coins that can easily disappear into an old jar of change, a forgotten box, or a family collection without anyone realizing that it deserves a closer examination. This particular example is described as a 1953 Lincoln wheat cent without a mint mark, showing signs of circulation, scratches and lines across the surfaces, a dark chocolate-brown copper color, and visible carbon spots. It is described as being around very fine condition and is presented with a claimed market value of $50,000. The first thing that makes this coin historically fascinating is its place in the Lincoln cent series. The Lincoln wheat cent was introduced in 1909 to commemorate the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. It was the first regular United States coin to feature a real historical person. Victor David Brenner designed the famous portrait of Lincoln on the obverse, while the reverse originally displayed two wheat ears surrounding the denomination and the words 1 cent and United States of America. The wheat cent design continued until 1958, making 1953 part of the final decade of one of America's most recognizable coin series. In 1959, the reverse changed to the Lincoln Memorial design, ending nearly half a century of the wheat ear reverse. A 1953 Lincoln cent without a mint mark was produced at the Philadelphia Mint. Philadelphia coins traditionally carried no mint mark during this era. That means the absence of a mint mark on a normal 1953 cent is not by itself an error. Collectors should understand this distinction because a missing mint mark is sometimes incorrectly advertised as a major rarity. The standard 1953 Lincoln cent was struck in bronze, with a composition of approximately 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc. It weighs about 3.11 grams and has a diameter of approximately 19.05 millimeters. Its thickness is around 1.582 millimeters. Like other Lincoln wheat cents of this period, it has a plain edge. The dark chocolate brown color mentioned on this particular coin is especially interesting. Copper naturally changes appearance over time as it reacts with oxygen, moisture, sulfur compounds, and other environmental elements. A properly preserved old copper cent can develop attractive brown or reddish-brown coloration. Collectors often pay close attention to the distinction between original natural color and artificially altered surfaces. Carbon spots are another important feature. Small dark spots can develop on copper coins through environmental reactions and impurities. Depending on their severity, they can affect eye appeal and grade. Some collectors prefer clean, even coloration, while others appreciate original surfaces because they show that the coin has not been aggressively cleaned or altered. The scratches and surface lines are more complicated. Genuine circulation marks can occur when coins rub against other coins, move through bags, or encounter hard surfaces. But scratches can also be caused after the coin leaves the mint. This is why collectors examine the direction, depth, location, and shape of surface marks. A genuine mint-made die characteristic is very different from a random scratch caused decades later. This is where the potential treasure aspect becomes interesting. A coin does not become rare simply because it is old or dark. Its value depends on a combination of rarity, condition, demand, originality, varieties, errors, provenance, and actual market evidence. A 1953 Philadelphia wheat cent is common compared with many earlier key-date Lincoln cents, so a $50,000 valuation would require something exceptional beyond the normal date and mint combination. The claimed market value of $50,000 should therefore be considered a stated or potential valuation, not an automatically established selling price. Before anyone assumes that a 1953 wheat cent is worth this amount, the coin should be professionally authenticated and compared against documented auction results. Collectors should carefully inspect the date, Lincoln's portrait, lettering, wheat ears, rim, and overall strike. Look for unusual doubling, die cracks, die breaks, off-center striking, broad strikes, clipped planchets, or other documented mint errors. But remember that many apparent errors are actually damage created after the coin entered circulation. The color should also be documented. A dark chocolate brown appearance can be completely natural, especially on an old copper coin. Do not attempt to turn it bright red by polishing or chemical treatment. Original surfaces are extremely important in numismatics, and cleaning can permanently reduce collectability. One of the most useful tests is simple measurement. Weigh the coin using an accurate digital scale capable of measuring hundredths of a gram. Measure its diameter and, if possible, thickness. Compare those measurements with the standard specifications. If the coin is significantly different, that could justify further investigation. The absence of a mint mark should also be confirmed under magnification. Examine the area beneath the date and make sure there is no damaged or altered surface where a mint mark might otherwise appear. On a normal 1953 Philadelphia cent, however, the absence of a mint mark is expected. The historical significance of this coin is undeniable even without a spectacular valuation. It represents America during the early 1950s, when the wheat cent was already several decades old but still circulating as everyday money. Imagine this small copper coin moving through shops, cash registers, pockets, and households before eventually being forgotten. That history is part of what makes old coins feel like hidden treasures. They are not simply pieces of metal. They are objects that survived decades of everyday life. If this particular 1953 cent truly contains an unusual, authenticated feature capable of supporting the claimed $50,000 value, professional certification would be essential. A reputable grading service can authenticate the coin, assess its condition, and document unusual characteristics. For the collector who finds one, the most important advice is patience. Do not clean it. Do not scratch suspicious areas. Do not apply chemicals. Do not attempt to improve the color. Photograph both sides, record the weight and measurements, and seek an expert opinion. A 1953 Lincoln wheat cent may look like an ordinary old penny, but careful inspection can reveal details that the average person would never notice. The dark chocolate copper color, carbon spotting, circulation marks, and original surfaces all contribute to its story. And that is the real lesson of this coin. Treasure does not always announce itself. Sometimes it is sitting quietly among ordinary pennies, waiting for someone to notice the date, understand the history, and investigate the details. If an exceptional variety or mint error is confirmed, that tiny piece of copper could become far more significant than its 1-cent denomination suggests. Next up, the 2011 D Lincoln Shield cent represents an important chapter in the evolution of the Lincoln cent, because by this point the familiar wheat reverse and Lincoln Memorial reverse were both part of history, and the United States Mint had already introduced the Lincoln Shield design. This particular example is described as a large date 2011 Lincoln Shield penny with a D mint mark, almost circulated, showing scratches and lines, natural brown coloration, and an extra fine appearance. The claimed market value is $17,000. Before examining the potential value, it is important to understand the history behind the design. The Lincoln cent has been part of American coinage since 1909. For decades, Americans became familiar with the wheat reverse, followed by the Lincoln Memorial reverse beginning in 1959. In 2009, the Mint issued 4 different reverse designs commemorating major periods in Lincoln's life. Then in 2010, the Lincoln Shield reverse became the permanent reverse design for the cent. The shield represents the preservation of the United States as one nation. The reverse includes a shield with vertical and horizontal elements, the denomination 1 cent, and the inscription United States of America. The design is distinctly different from both the wheat and memorial reverses that came before it. A 2011 D Lincoln cent was struck at the Denver Mint, which is identified by the small D mint mark. The standard 2011 cent has a copper-plated zinc composition. It contains a zinc core with a thin copper outer layer. The coin weighs approximately 2.5 grams, measures about 19.05 millimeters in diameter, and is approximately 1.52 millimeters thick. Its edge is plain. There is an important difference between this coin and the 19th of 53 wheat cent. The 19th 53 cent is a bronze coin, while the 2011 cent is primarily zinc with copper plating. That means scratches and environmental damage can sometimes reveal the underlying metal. Deep damage can expose the zinc core, which may then develop a different appearance from the surrounding copper-colored surface. The described natural brown color is worth examining carefully. Copper-plated zinc cents can develop color changes through circulation, environmental exposure, and surface reactions. However, a naturally toned surface should not be confused with an intentionally altered color. Collectors should always consider whether the appearance is original and consistent across the coin. The scratches and lines are another major point of interest. Most scratches on circulated coins are post-mint damage and do not increase value. But collectors should look closely at unusual lines because some characteristics can originate during the minting process. The challenge is determining whether a line is part of the die, a strike-related feature, a plating issue, or simply damage that happened after the coin was released. The term large date also deserves caution. Unlike some famous Lincoln cent varieties where large date and small date distinctions are well established and highly collectible, a casual description of a 2011 cent as a large date does not automatically make it rare or valuable. The date should be compared against recognized varieties and documented diagnostics before assigning a premium. The claimed market value of $17,000 is therefore an extraordinary figure for a standard 2011 D cent. It should not be considered a guaranteed value based solely on the date, mint mark, coloration, or circulated condition. Such a valuation would require a specific rare error or variety and strong supporting market evidence. That does not mean the coin should be ignored. Modern cents can contain fascinating mint errors. Collectors search for off-center strikes, broad strikes, clipped planchets, die breaks, doubled dies, missing plating, struck-through errors, and other abnormalities. Some can be valuable, but each needs to be examined carefully and preferably authenticated. One of the best things a collector can do with a suspicious 2011 D cent is inspect it under magnification. Examine Lincoln's portrait, the date, the mint mark, the lettering, the shield, the rim, and the edge. Look for unusual doubling that affects the actual design rather than random surface scratches. Weight is particularly useful with copper-plated zinc cents. A standard coin should be close to 2.5 grams. A significant deviation could indicate a plancher issue, damage, or measurement problem. However, weight alone cannot prove a valuable error. Do not clean the coin. This advice is especially important with modern cents because their thin copper plating can be easily damaged. Abrasive cleaning may expose the zinc beneath the surface and destroy the original appearance. The history behind this penny makes it more interesting than its small size suggests. It belongs to the early years of the Lincoln Shield design and represents a period when the cent was undergoing changes in composition, design, and public discussion. It may have passed through vending machines, cash registers, pockets, and coin jars before ending up in a collection. That is why collectors often describe coin hunting as searching for hidden history. You are not just looking at the denomination, you are looking for evidence of how the coin was made, how it circulated, and what happened to it afterward. If an authenticated mint error or rare variety is discovered on this 2011 D cent, the value could become dramatically different from the face value. But without such evidence, the claimed $17,000 figure should remain a claim requiring verification. For anyone who believes they have discovered a valuable example, the smartest strategy is documentation. Photograph the coin under good lighting, record its weight, measure its diameter and thickness, and avoid touching the surfaces unnecessarily. Keep it in a safe holder and seek an independent professional opinion. A coin worth thousands is not determined by excitement alone. It is determined by authentication, rarity, condition, demand, and what buyers have actually paid for comparable pieces. Still, there is something exciting about finding a 2011 D Lincoln Shield cent that looks different from the millions of ordinary cents around it. Most people would probably spend it without a second thought. A careful collector stops, examines the details, and asks a much more important question. What exactly happened to this coin before it reached my hands? That question is where the hidden treasure begins. The penny may have only 1 cent written into its denomination, but a genuine mint-made rarity can turn an ordinary-looking coin into a fascinating piece of modern American numismatic history. Next up, the 1978 Lincoln Memorial penny is a perfect example of why collectors should never judge a coin simply by its age, appearance, or one unusual feature. This example is described as a 1978 Lincoln Memorial cent without a mint mark, almost circulated, with scratches and lines across the surfaces, rainbow coloration, and an extremely fine appearance. The claimed market value is $10,000 or more. To understand this coin, we need to go back to 1959, when the United States Mint changed the reverse of the Lincoln cent. The famous wheat ears were replaced by an image of the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. The change was made to commemorate the 150th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. The Lincoln Memorial reverse remained on the cent for decades, making it one of the most familiar coin designs in American history. The obverse continued to feature Victor David Brenner's portrait of Abraham Lincoln, while the reverse displayed the memorial, surrounded by the inscriptions United States of America, E pluribus unum, and 1 cent. A 1978 cent without a mint mark was produced at the Philadelphia Mint. This is an important point because collectors sometimes assume that every coin without a mint mark is an error. That is not the case. Philadelphia cents normally did not carry a mint mark during this period, so the missing mint mark itself is not unusual. The 1978 Lincoln cent was struck in the traditional bronze composition used for circulating Lincoln cents before the major composition change of 1982. The coin is approximately 95% copper and 5% zinc. It weighs about 3.11 grams, measures approximately 19.05 millimeters across, and is around 1.52 millimeters thick. The edge is plain. The rainbow coloration on this particular example is perhaps its most visually striking characteristic. Copper coins can develop beautiful colors over time when exposed to different environmental conditions. Depending on the storage environment, a copper cent may develop shades of brown, red, orange, purple, blue, or other tones. However, attractive color does not automatically mean high value. Collectors distinguish between natural toning and artificial coloration. Natural toning can sometimes be desirable, particularly when it is attractive and original. Artificially colored coins may be considered damaged or altered by the marketplace. The scratches and lines must also be evaluated carefully. A circulated coin naturally accumulates marks as it moves through commerce. Contact with other coins, machinery, hard surfaces, and storage containers can create scratches. These marks can affect the grade and eye appeal. This is where the mystery becomes interesting. A coin with an unusual surface may attract attention, but the collector must determine whether the feature was created at the mint or sometime afterward. Mint errors can be valuable. Post-mint damage generally is not. The claimed market value of $10,000 or more is therefore something that requires substantial verification. A standard 1978 Philadelphia Lincoln Memorial cent is not normally a $10,000 coin, merely because it is a 1978 issue, has no mint mark, or displays rainbow coloration. For a value in that range to be realistic, there would need to be a specific rare variety, major mint error, exceptional condition, or another documented characteristic supported by actual market evidence. Collectors should begin with the basics. Check the date carefully. Inspect the letters in Liberty and In God We Trust. Examine the Lincoln portrait for doubling or unusual die characteristics. On the reverse, study the memorial, lettering, denomination, and rim. Look closely at the edge and surfaces under magnification. The weight should also be checked. A normal 1978 bronze cent should be close to 3.11 grams. Diameter should be approximately 19.05 millimeters, and thickness should be around 1.52 millimeters. Measurements that differ substantially may justify further investigation, although damage and wear can sometimes affect measurements. The coin's natural color is another reason to preserve it rather than modify it. Never polish a potentially valuable copper cent. Never use vinegar, abrasive cleaners, metal polish, or other household chemicals. Cleaning can remove the original surface and permanently change the appearance. Instead, place the coin in an appropriate holder and keep it in a stable environment. Take clear photographs of both sides and the edge. If the rainbow toning appears unusual, photograph it under neutral lighting rather than using filters that exaggerate the colors. The 1978 cent also carries historical importance because it comes from the final years before the United States Mint introduced major changes to the Lincoln cent's composition. It belongs to an era when copper cents were still widely used in everyday American commerce. Imagine this tiny coin being handed over at a store in 1978. It may have purchased something small, passed through a cash register, and eventually entered someone's pocket. Decades later, it could be sitting unnoticed in an old collection. That is the magic of coin collecting. A coin does not need to look spectacular to deserve attention. Sometimes the most interesting discovery is a coin that everyone else has already overlooked. If this particular 1978 Philadelphia cent really contains a rare authenticated feature capable of supporting a $10,000 plus valuation, professional certification would be the next step. A recognized grading service can determine authenticity and condition, while specialists can compare the coin against known varieties and errors. Collectors should also remember that market value is not the same thing as a price printed on a website or repeated in a video. Real market value is best supported by documented sales, auction results, reputable dealer offers, and authenticated examples. So if you find a 1978 Lincoln Memorial penny with unusual rainbow color, scratches, or other strange characteristics, do not immediately spend it. Examine it first. Check the date. Confirm the absence of the mint mark. Weigh it. Measure it. Study the surfaces. Compare it with reliable references. Most examples will turn out to be ordinary circulated cents. But occasionally, careful examination can uncover something genuinely unusual. And that possibility is what keeps collectors searching through jars, drawers, old albums, inherited collections, and forgotten boxes. A coin that appears to be worth only 1 cent can sometimes contain a story that reaches far beyond its denomination. The 1978 Lincoln Memorial cent may be small, but it represents decades of American history, millions of everyday transactions, and the continuing fascination of numismatics. If a genuine rare variety or mint error is hiding within this particular example, its real treasure will not be the number printed beside it. It will be the evidence proving why collectors are willing to pay a premium for it.